Welcome in, everybody, to a fresh episode of the Not Another Bucking podcast. My name is Nick Kosmider, your host, beat writer at The Athletic, covering the Broncos. And we're going to get to a conversation here in just a second with Nate Kreckman, afternoon radio host at Altitude 92.5, the Kreckman and Lindahl Show. Just great conversation with Nate about where the Broncos are at, winning 4 straight games to get to 5-5. We'll talk about the Kareem Jackson suspension of 4 games that was upheld, by the NFL today, as well as what to expect from this game against the Browns. But first, we'll just kind of scoot through the news of the week. The Broncos again won Sunday night, beat the Vikings 21-20 to win their 4th straight game, and as I mentioned, move to 5-5. They're 1 game out of the 6th and 7th wild card spot in the AFC, and they play AFC playoff contenders each of the next 2 weeks. They host the Cleveland Browns, who are 7-3, on Sunday at Empower Field, and then they go to Houston to face the Texans, who are 6-4, entering Week 12. So a huge stretch coming up for the Broncos will determine a lot about where they're at. On the injury front, P.J. Locke, the safety who would be in line to replace Kareem Jackson as a starter, dealing with an ankle injury. Sean Payton said Monday during his weekly post-game day after press conference that PJ Locke is he's progressing, but didn't have really an update on whether he'll be available. He said we'll kind of see how he progresses. So it'll be interesting to see whether he participates in practice on Wednesday. Otherwise, outside of that, the Broncos are largely healthy. Has been a big theme for them going into throughout this season, particularly on the offensive line. So they are in good shape. But again, that safety position, particularly against a really good Cleveland rushing attack, is going to be something that we will keep an eye on throughout the week. With that, let's hop right into our conversation with Nate Kreckman. And now we welcome in my good friend from Altitude Sports Radio, Altitude Entertainment Empire, Nate Kreckman. We are here to discuss the wild card matchup between the 2-seeded Miami Dolphins and the 7th-seeded Broncos rematching. Oh, dang, sorry. I just had a fever dream for a second. Nate, am I getting ahead of myself?
It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, okay? That it doesn't mean that. Keep the hope alive, all right? They've won 4 in a row. Hey, after the Packard game, I was the only guy in town that said this is the start to 12-5, and I'm not wrong yet.
Hey, man, if you've won 5 in a row, what's 7 more? You know?
Exactly. Yeah, they're rolling.
Well, and look, it beats the alternative that we've been banging our heads with. That's my thing too. I've seen some of this stuff, where people are trying to you get commenters, they're picking apart we're catching this team at the right time because of this team at the right time because of that. Mm-hmm. And all that can be true, and then you have people lamenting we're going to look back when we missed the playoffs and say we didn't get any of these quarterbacks. I'm like, we've done all that for the last 7 years. Why not just kind of dive into it a little bit,
This was a huge topic on our show yesterday, okay? And this is where, and I have to admit, I'm not the most online dude. I try to stay away generally from Twitter and comment sections and everything else like that. I kind of try to keep zeroed in, get ready for my radio show, have prepared what I think, and then, I'll start to get audience feedback. And, my co-host Andy Lindahl had sort of warned me about this yesterday because I always joke with him. He's very active on the Broncos dark web. Okay. He's very in tune to what is going on there. And we start our show yesterday, and my take is this is amazing. This team has won 4 games in a row. They continue to somehow pull these games out. They're not playing great offense. They're not scoring a bunch of points, but they're taking care of the football. They're winning the turnover margin. This is phenomenal. This is a Broncos team that sort of fought their way back into being in the NFL's middle class. And when you're in that spot right there, you can go to the playoffs, okay? You can win close games. You can win one-score games if you take care of the football and you win the turnover margin, and that's noisy and it's not particularly sustainable, but you can go to the playoffs if you do that. And largely a lot of the response from our listeners on Kreckman and Lindahl, and we were getting this, via text and Twitter and everything else like that, is just like, it's not sustainable. That's not real. Well, no kidding. I know that. Okay, like this is why the Broncos win total was 8.5 coming into the season. This is why very few, minimal amounts of outlets were picking this team to be able to go to the playoffs. They're not that good. We know that. This is a rebuilding team right now, but also they have found a way to be able to win. And every year, a suboptimal roster will put a run together and make the playoffs. It could be the Broncos.
So why not enjoy the one that is in your market, in your backyard? Because that's exactly right. I think other people are watching this team from around the league be like, oh, cool, the Broncos are kind of fun right now. Like they're doing stuff. They were 1-5. Now they've battled all the way back to 500. That's where I'm at with it too, Nate, is like, look, it's forcing 12 turnovers in 3 games is not sustainable. Winning games on last drives, winning when you're 2 of 12 on third down or 0 of 4 in your first 4 red zone trips. Like, sure, that's not going to win you most games, but they tend to come up with some sort of different formula. And we never thought that we would be at Thanksgiving thinking that this team had a shot to make the playoffs. And so, like, to me, that it's refreshing in a way to actually be. I mean, the 2021 team had some of this, but I think that they had also Drew Lock playing quarterback once Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, and that was the difference. I've seen some of this stuff that people have said a lot of lately is just like, this is reminding me of the Tebow team. I'm like, Tebow completed 45% of his passes. Like, well, it's something of a backhanded compliment. I understand.
It is, and there's. I will say that I think there's a little bit of a hybrid between, like, the 2018 team got to 6-6, and then Nick Mullins and George Kittle destroyed them in San Francisco and they were done. The 21 team, like you said, they were at 7-6.
Yeah.
And
Bengals.
And that was fun for a minute. And then the Bengals game happened. And then they lost the last 3. The one thing that I will say of the similarity to 2011 that this team has found is that was a team that, and this offense is better than that one. There's no doubt about that. And Russ is better than Tim Tebow, but also, like, this is not a high-flying, explosive offense. This is an offense that is generally really trying to play risk-averse football and not really have any danger of turning the ball over. And as a result, they're +3 against Minnesota the other night. They're +11 on the 4-game win streak right now. And with the quality of defense that they're playing and the way that they're forcing turnovers, and again, I know that's a little noisy and not necessarily sustainable, but that's how you win a game where you have fewer than 300 yards total offense. Like you mentioned, 2 of 12 on third down, 1 touchdown in 5 red zone trips, but you win the turnover margin and you can beat a team that has a better roster than you. And I would argue that the last 3 weeks, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Minnesota, the Broncos beat teams that have a better roster than they do. But you can do that in the NFL because the talent disparity is not that great, and turnover margin is freaking everything.
Yeah, it is. And I think it was such a shift for me, Nate, like after that week 6 Kansas City game. And really, even in that game, they had sort of played the super kind of conservative card, but Wilson still turned the ball over 3 times, and it was after that where you started hearing it like so vocally from Sean Payton, where it was like, I can't express to you guys enough how much we are playing to not turn the ball over, and you think of it as like, well, then you're not really going to be doing a whole lot offensively, but to your point, you really don't have to. And especially when you have a return guy like Marvin Mims, who's giving you field position because
Mhm.
they're so much better on special teams than they were really the past 5-6 years, pick your number. And the fact that the defense is turning the ball over, and them turning the ball over is a product of them knowing where the ball is at
Yep.
a different rate than they did early in the year. I wrote today that I think like there still is going to have to be an evolution of this offense, because at some point the faucet of turnovers is going to get turned off. Like teams are going to look at the Broncos taking the ball away at every turn, and they're going to sort of play it the same way Denver's playing it now. Is like, guys, we can beat these guys as long as we don't turn the ball over. We're comfortable punting, all these sorts of things.
Cleveland's such an interesting matchup for that very reason.
Yeah, 100%. And especially them with this rookie quarterback, like they're going to lean into that even further. Although they have actually turned the ball over a fair amount this year. But that's the way that those other teams are going to play. But the one thing I would say is like, I think that Peyton, like, he talks so much about the quarter pole and like understanding your team and where it was at. And I've started to like kind of lean toward giving him the benefit of the doubt in terms of like, well, if they're not going to be able to just win it on the turnovers, which is primarily how they've won these 4 games, that they'll come up with something else and adjust in a way that makes sense for them, just because we saw such a dramatic turnaround from him already.
Yeah, it's and really, like if you look at the game plan against Minnesota, it's not the same that it was in the Buffalo game, really at all. The run pass ratio is at 15-35 because of Brian Flores and his and all of that eye candy that he's using defensively at the line of scrimmage. And whether he's blitzing or he's rushing 3 and dropping 8, whatever it is, rushing 4, dropping 7, which it was interesting to hear Collinsworth talk the other night about how that had been really ineffective for them in that game. So that game, it was all swing passes. It was heavy on the screen game and the swing pass stuff, and it wasn't particularly effective.
Right.
And they couldn't convert on third downs. And when they did have to get vertical, they weren't able to have much success doing all of that. But again, because of quality field position, you only need a couple of first downs, and boom, you're in Will Lutz range and you can kick a field goal. And, even when this team forces a turnover on the opening drive and they take over, or they at the Vikings 34 or whatever it is, they don't do anything on that drive, but they go away with 3 points. It's the old Peyton Manning quote of, you don't go broke making a profit. That's the way that Sean Payton is approaching this thing right now. And it's working. Like they've won 4 games in a row like that. And there's no reason that they can't be in every single game that they play the rest of the way, playing this kind of football. And Russell Wilson has proven to be a good fourth quarter quarterback.
Yeah, no, and that part hasn't changed. You even saw, as terrible as 2022 was. And I remember the game against the 49ers when he he puts together a late drive and had a flip to Melvin Gordon for a big gain, similar to the way that he's been flipping to Samaje Perine, who eventually teams you would think would start defending. But
he had 47 total yards on that final drive.
47 total yards. And I was saying this today to somebody. Obviously we talked about Cortland Sutton's 15-yard touchdown catch. It was awesome. It was phenomenal. It's such a cool play. A kind of, if they make the playoffs, that'll be one of those plays, that and the Buffalo catch, the Kansas City catch, even though they lost that game. But that 7-yard run by Samaje Perine on 3rd and 10. I think the Broncos were going to probably go for it on 4th down, almost regardless of where they were at. Yeah. Now 4th and 10 though, like that might have been a different decision. They hand it off. He picks up 7, close to 8 yards. And then you're in a much more manageable fourth down spot. But yeah, he's been excellent. And they just have a formula now that they kind of know what they can depend on. And some of the thing watching back that last drive is like Russell Wilson, it wasn't just like he was settling for Samaje as like my last resort. He was very quick and decisive in saying like, I know what's going to happen. Yeah. They're going to throw the pressure. I don't see anybody tagging him. He's going to leak out. I'm going to do it quick, and he's going to have more space to run. So like, but yeah, the combination of Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, he didn't forget how to do this 2-minute thing. Like as bad as last year was, he didn't forget how to do this. And so that's what at the very least makes it exciting. But Nate, the other big story, obviously in Broncos land, the thing that they're going to have to really reconcile now is a 4-game absence from Kareem Jackson, whose suspension by the NFL was upheld after a review by Derek Brooks, the jointly appointed hearing officer by the league and the PA. They said, "Yep, we cut your suspension in half last time.
No dice.
No leeway this time." So he'll end up serving 6 games worth of suspension. What was your biggest? I wasn't able to catch you and Andy today, Nate. What was your biggest kind of takeaway on all this?
Well, here's the thing I need you to do. Okay, this is where I rely on you, the professional journalist. Is will you do the math for me and figure out if he going to make any money this year between fines and suspensions? And I think Spot Track said he was due like 2.5 million or something like that. What's he actually going to end up making?
The math right now is that between his fines and lost wages, he's going to be at around 950K of lost wages and fines out of that 2.5, which you said. So it's like, I think it's 36% of his salary for the year is gone. Yeah, that stings. That stings. Especially when you're talking about a guy who, has played as long as he's played, and like he's had to scrape and claw these last however many years for these, it's like the defensive version of a running back. Like, I mean, Kareem Jackson's made a lot of money in this league. I think over $30 million, well over $30 million. And he, of course, he went on his Twitter binge after the first suspension when somebody's talking about his money. He said, money's never anything I'll ever have to worry about. But, that's anybody losing $1 million. I don't care how much money you make. That stings.
Yeah. Look, wow, I did the Sean Payton thing. I said, look, sorry about that. Here's the thing, though.
Relative to?
Yeah. Listen. Yeah. All right. On Kareem Jackson, and I'm not here to litigate the legality of his hit, okay? That part of it I don't care about, all right? And I'm not some football bleeding heart out there that's, we got to take the big hits out of the game. Like, no, you signed up to play football. You are risking life and limb every single time that you walk out there. And in 2023, you know damn well what the risks are when you step out onto an NFL field, okay? You're not one of those players from the 80s and 90s that thought, oh, the helmet will protect me. I'll just go smash my head into everything. And then we know what happens. We know what happened with the lawsuits. We know what happened with the fallout. We know what CTE is today. Like, all of that stuff, that's out the window. Your eyes are wide open. It's like, if you take up smoking in 2023, if you want to drive without a seatbelt in 2023, like, the risks. Yeah. Okay, there's no surprises that's coming your way. So that part of it, I don't care about, whether or not the sport should be violent or what is he supposed to do or anything else like that. The league has told him. They have told him. They have told the players, don't play like that. Okay? Do not lead with the crown of your helmet. Get your head to the side, get your head up, and wrap. All right? And sometimes you're going to get penalties or you're going to get fines, and it's going to be on bang-bang plays. And, the pad level is going to change, and it's going to change in a split second, and that's just how it goes. In the case of Kareem Jackson, this guy has already suffered however many fines that he suffered this year. Was it Jacoby Myers, and then Logan Thomas, and then Luke Musgrave, and now Josh Dobbs? This is a pattern, and the league's already suspended him once. They've already fined him numerous times. They nail him on this thing again. You go back and look at that damn hit, and crown of the helmet, and his arms are in when he goes to make the hit. Like, it's almost as though the guy was putting on a display in a brochure for exactly not how to tackle somebody if you don't want to get fined and suspended, but he did it. I'm out of sympathy for Kareem Jackson. He's hurting himself. He's hurting this team because of the way that he's choosing to play, and
Yeah,
and that's and it's flat out bad for this team. Nick, their safety play without Caden Stearns, who was already injured. You're without PJ Locke, and you're losing Kareem Jackson. That's really, really bad for your secondary. That's not good for the team.
no, it's not, and it's the thing that I have found so stunning about all of this is that last Wednesday, Wednesday or Thursday, it was one of those 2 days. Kareem Jackson talked in the locker room for the first time since coming back from his suspension, and the guy said, "I don't know how to play this game." He said, "I don't know how to play this game now under these rules." He says, "I've talked to John Runyon on the phone. I've had conversations with Derek Brooks on the phone, and I hang up the phone not having any clarity." Like the man, and he said, "I'm going to be in these situations 2 to 3 times a game." And he essentially forecasted what was going to happen on Sunday. And so to me, part of this is also on the Broncos. Like they have a guy who has done this since the very beginning of the season and has shown no sort of like awareness of what's coming, because he is absolutely, like, I'm not getting into like the whole, to your point, like dirty player. It's doesn't like matter. That's not a quantifiable. It's a label people throw around. Whatever. I'm not massaging, not assailing his character. None of that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is that he cost them dearly in the Raiders game. He cost them dearly in the Commanders game. Like when that hit happened, and then allowed Washington to get a 2-point conversion because of the penalty.
Moved it up.
Took him out of the game, to your point, and put in depth that they just do not have at that position. Like, they probably lost that game in large part because he was ejected. And then, he hits Musgrave, gives Green Bay life on a drive that might not have gone anywhere. Green Bay takes the lead in the fourth quarter. Obviously, the Broncos were able to come back, kick a Will Lutz field goal to win it. But like, it's the bottom line is that he is constantly putting you in these situations where the team is hurt by it. Like, individual teammates have come to bat for him, and I understand it. I get it. But the overarching picture is that what he's bringing versus what he's putting at risk for the team, to say nothing of the player safety element of it, is significant.
If they throw a flag the other night, it wipes out a fumble, right?
Right.
Wipes out a turnover. It takes 3 points off the board. Well, the final score is 21-20. You lose. Okay? You just cost your team. And like we talked about before, this is a team that has such a slim margin right now. These kind of mistakes are killer. And to your point, and any corner that just gets called for PI constantly, hey, Damari Mathis doesn't really play anymore. Okay? Right. O linemen that fall, start, and hold constantly. Like, you're hurting your team. That's where he's at this point. And good on Justin Simmons and Pat Surtain for sticking up for him, but neither of these guys have this problem.
Right. Yeah. And so Justin Simmons even shared a video where he was saying, I don't know if you saw this today, Nate, but he shared a video. He's like, I had a similar hit last year against the Ravens, but then you watch the video and they just simply don't look the same. Like, it's Simmons with his shoulder, and his head is like turned away from the ball carrier. And now maybe his helmet ended up contacting some of him, but you can see in the video that he leads with his shoulder. Whereas, right. I mean, it's just, we're overcomplicating it. Like, he's leading with guys with his head. Like the Logan Thomas hit, man, like there was nothing that you can say about that, because he launched himself at an upward angle directly toward this guy that's like 6'5". But there's so much other body to hit. And I would think that if you hit the guy in the chest where he's trying to catch the ball, that would probably be more effective. Forget the safety of it. Probably be more effective tackle.
No, he's giving the league a lot of footage for the how not to do it video that they can send to teams next year. He's becoming the poster boy for it now at this point. So yeah, I just like, I can't defend it. I can't defend it. I can't defend him. This is what I said yesterday on my radio show. Okay. You get a speeding ticket. Well, you got it because there was a speed limit sign that was posted. Okay. Now, if they don't post a sign, then there is no speeding. But like, you've been fined and suspended. The sign is up. They've told you to stop doing this. And it really is a shame because he is a good player. He's a veteran player. He knows where he needs to be. He's not going to fall for, motions and eye candy and everything else like that. Like, Vance Joseph needs this guy in the field, and the secondary is the best part of this football team. Him not being out there makes the team worse.
Yeah, and I think that can kind of transition us, Nate, into the game against the Browns on Sunday. The Broncos, I've made this like reference a couple times this week, but everything that you say about the Broncos, a lot of times there's a conversation where you say, okay, well, let's throw out that 70-point game, right? Like let's take that out of the equation and look at everything else. You can take out the Miami game, and they are still the worst rush defense in the NFL. So, like, to me, safeties are a pretty big deal in the run game, and like the fact that he's out and PJ Locke, we don't know yet. We'll maybe have a better idea Wednesday. My just like early guess this week is that he's not going to be ready to play. If it's an ankle injury, like he was in a walking boot after the Bills game, that's always 3 to 4 weeks at a minimum. So I would be hard pressed to think he's going to play. So now we're talking about De'Laren Turner-Yell, who has played really well for Denver on special teams, but not in a starting safety role. Or JL Skinner, who was up for the first time on Sunday, but didn't, all of his snaps came on special teams. He's never played a defensive snap in the NFL. So like, it's just not a good deal that like you're gonna have to play this team that runs the ball this way when you're already having problems stopping the run. To me, as I watch this game, it's that, and it's Myles Garrett. Like, can they in any way close the gap on what appears to be major mismatches on paper?
Yeah, Myles Garrett, I mean, is a game wrecker in and of himself. That Cleveland, Dallas, these are the best defenses in the NFL. Chiefs belong in that conversation of these are absolutely the very best defenses in all of the NFL. And so points are going to be at a premium in this game. We absolutely know that is going to be the case. And yes, being able to stop the run against Kareem Hunt and company, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough when you don't have your full complement of good run-stuffing players. And Kareem Jackson is 100% one of those players. And then you look at the flip side, and last week was a weird game for the Browns. They won 13-10. Dorian Thompson-Robinson threw the ball 43 times in that game. 43 throws, which is nuts in a 13-10 game, but the Next Gen Stats had it. I believe only 2 of those were 10 or more air yards down the field. Yeah, right. I mean, this is as dink Russell and dunk as it could possibly get. Yeah, it's a little Russell Wilson-ish right there. And in a lot of ways, these two teams are the Spider-Man meme sort of looking at each other. Now, Cleveland's defense is better than Denver's defense, and Denver's defense has played really well of late, but like, Myles Garrett's having a defensive player of the year type of season. That guy's an absolute game wrecker right there. So yeah, this is a tough game. Now it's good that Denver's at home. The Broncos have that going for themselves, but I fully assume this is another fourth quarter game. This will be this is going to get decided in the closing minutes. It's going to be another one of those. And I would tell Broncos fans, Houston coming up after that. That's what this season's going to be the rest of the way. I don't see a bunch of 2-score wins left on the schedule anymore. But here's the good news. They're at least in these games right now. And they're giving us that entertaining brand of football. And Sean Payton is going to make the adjustments that he has to through the course of the season. So this is going to be another tough one. And it's going to be like a 20-18 something weird football game.
Yeah. It's funny that the biggest win of the 5 games they've had from a point margin perspective is the 15-point win against the Chiefs. Who would have thought?
That's because the Chiefs don't score points in the second half. They refuse.
Right, yeah. That is a lucky thing to have as an opponent.
Hey, to know that. Real quick, one more thought, because you didn't listen to my radio show today. I'll forgive you, but I do want to recycle a take really quickly. Watching both Justin Herbert's receivers on Sunday, and watching the Chiefs last night, we're recording this on Tuesday, so on Monday Night Football, and the way that they played against the Eagles, the appreciation for Courtland Sutton and his ability to make both the tough catches and the easy catches. If the ball hits that guy in the hands, he's going to catch the damn ball, and that is not to be overlooked in its importance. Typically, NFL wide receivers, if you get 10 fingers on it, you should hang on to it, but that's not the case for the Chiefs and the Chargers. So some appreciation for Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's no doubt about it. Like, I think I was kind of stunned, like, to look it up, and I think Courtland Sutton has 400 yards this year, but it seems like so much more than that. Because it just seems like every play he makes is like absolutely vital to them winning. Like, there's not
They
some
just don't. This was the first game in the last 5 that Russ was over 200 yards. Like the passing offense is cratered out. They just don't. This team doesn't move the ball a lot. They get good field position. They move into field goal range and they get 3 points.
Yeah, and you can settle for field goals if you're going to kick 5 of them. Like, it's like, oh, you don't settle for field goals. Well, what if I just hit one to a quarter? Is that good enough? But I'm with you, Nate. Like, I think that would be like where I'd leave it. Is I'm really fascinated by the Myles Garrett thing, because the Broncos have actually done like a decent job against the other teams, like absolute stud, right? And like, as with everything else, take out Miami. But Max Crosby in week 1, he did end up with a sack on Russell Wilson, but I thought they largely neutralized him pretty well. Chris Jones in the first game kind of wrecked shop a little bit. But they defended him much better in the rematch. And Rashawn Gary with the Packers was not a huge factor in that.
Daniil Hunter had won the other night?
Yeah, the one, the early sack on that opening drive after Denver had gotten the fumble recovery by Jaquan McMillan. But how they do it with Myles Garrett, it's obviously going to be a committee type thing. Mike McGlinchey, one of the things I was writing this week too is like these free agents that the Broncos had. You looked at the first 4 weeks, there was like no contribution. Mike McGlinchey gave up 5 sacks in the first 6 weeks of the season, or was charged with such by Pro Football Focus. None since then, none since week 6. His pressure rate allowed has like plummeted. Zach Allen had a pressure rate in the first 4 weeks of about 5%. It's up to 15%. Ever since then, you can see it, just sort of the eye test. And then what P. Ryan has been able to do. I'm at the point where I think it's probably time to start giving him Jaleel McLaughlin's carries at this point, outside of some gadget stuff, because I just think he's probably earned that role. But you have guys playing better. You have guys understanding what Peyton wants a little bit more. But yeah, I'm gonna be fascinated to see how they handle the Garrett thing, because in your quest to not turn the ball over or not just have these like backbreaking plays, he's the one guy that can kind of spin that on its head on Sunday afternoon. So
yeah, short field position is where DTR can kill you. By the way, speaking of Zach Allen, I had a moment where I was like, ooh, that guy's just suffered a severe back injury. And then he was okay. So whoever his massage therapist or yoga instructor is, 2 thumbs up for those people. They're good.
I saw him in the locker room. I went up to him in the locker room after. I was like, so yeah, you just like bent your back in half. He's like, yeah, one of those. It's like, it's one of those scorpion hits, which I had never heard it described that way, but it was pretty funny. He's like, I'll be all right. Like, cause I'm with you, man. I was like, oh, he just bent his back like an accordion. Thanks to Alex Singleton. So,
I'd be in traction if they did that to me. So the difference between me and pro athletes.
Yeah, no doubt that the differences end there. We're in every other way the same. You and me, Nate, obviously. My friend, thanks for joining us. Have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy the game on Sunday, and we'll do this again soon.
Oh, absolutely. A happy Thanksgiving to the entire Not Another Bucking audience and listeners and everybody else, and producer Kaz, and of course, Nick, to you and your family. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and be sure to listen to the Kreckman and Lindahl show on Altitude 92.5 every weekday afternoon. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of a Not Another Bucking podcast. We will be back breaking down Broncos and Browns on Sunday night. Until then, thanks for stopping by.